Well, my childhood inspired me to become a prosecutor. I am a victim of child abuse. In my childhood, I suffered at the hands of somebody who was supposed to protect me. I also witnessed verbal abuse, emotional abuse, domestic violence. I was fortunate in that I didn't have to stay in that environment very long. And so once I was able to get out of that environment, I knew that what I experienced was not normal. It wasn't the way childhoods are supposed to be. And so in speaking with my support system at that point, it inspired me to go into law. It inspired me to be an advocate for children. And I thought the best way to do that would be becoming a prosecutor. The best part about being a prosecutor is being able to touch multiple people's lives. Given my background, I knew that I wanted to be a child advocate. I started in this prosecutor's office in the child protection unit, and so I felt that I was able to be the voice for children who were not able to advocate for themselves or have a voice of their own. That was very fulfilling. And being able to put families back together, even given the situation in my beginnings, I still wanted to see a happy ending. And so when I was in the child protection unit, we were able to work to putting some families back together. And now that I'm in the criminal division, it's the same thing. There are victims every day, and sometimes they don't have the strength or the words to really say what it was that affected them. And I feel like I'm able to be in a position where I can create those words for them. We do see a lot of trauma. We see a lot of abuse. We see what society in general doesn't want to see. We see that on a daily basis in our line of work. The hardest part for me probably would have to be seeing people's trauma and the way that the traumatic experience has affected them. It changes their personality, it changes their outlook on life, and that's sad, and it's hard to get through. Each victim deals with things in their own way. It's the same thing with my own childhood trauma. I felt like I took what my experience was, and I tried to turn it into a positive. I know people who it hasn't been quite the same for them. Just validation in general for a victim, I think, is very empowering for them. There are lots of cases that impact me. I carry a lot of them with me. I'll say one of the ones that sticks out more prevalent than the others is one in which I was prepping for a criminal trial. We were just a day before the trial itself. It was for sexual battery. And at that point in time, the defendant decided that they wanted to change their plea from not guilty to guilty. I went and got on the phone with the victim, and I let the victim know that the defendant decided to plead guilty. And it was at that moment that I could hear the victim just sobbing on the phone. Relief, validation, vindication. It was just very heartwarming that there were no words spoken. It was just sobbing, but it meant everything. Biggest misconceptions, run into it sometimes on a daily basis if we're in the courtroom, is that the prosecutors, we're in a conspiracy. We're conspiring, whether it be with the judges or maybe a defense attorney or something. We're conspiring to get a guilty verdict. When I was in the child protection unit, we're conspiring with children's services to steal children away, and we're getting a quota for it. No. No. I did what I did in the child protection unit because that was the right thing to do. Children should not be suffering through some of the situations that they've been put in. And same for the criminal division. I'm working towards justice. I'm hoping to hold people accountable for their actions. If we're taking a case to trial, it's because I've viewed the evidence and I'm firmly convinced that the defendant is the one who committed the crime. It's not about the guilty verdict. Sherry Bevan Walsh has been awesome in advocating to her prosecutors that we are about getting justice. And justice may in fact mean that after viewing the evidence in front of us, the defendant is not the person who committed the crime. Or maybe a crime wasn't committed, and therefore she gives us latitude to dismiss those cases, and we do. We're not about the numbers. We're about making sure that society is served by those of us who are in this position, and that those who are committing crimes and who are guilty are being held accountable.